I thought I was pulling a baby monkey out of a flooded mountain lake that late August afternoon. But when I dragged the small, soaked creature from the icy water and met its dark, unsettlingly intelligent eyes, something deep inside me knew I had just encountered something that wasn't supposed to exist. The feeling lingered for only a second before I forced it down, choosing the most reasonable explanation I could live with. I had no idea that saving that creature would draw something out of the wilderness and straight to my cabin, something that would shatter everything I believed about the mountains and forests surrounding my home. My name is Michael Reed. I'm 52 years old, and I've lived alone in these northern Montana mountains for the past decade. I work as a power line maintenance technician, which means I spend most of my days climbing poles and hiking remote terrain that most people will never see. The solitude suits me. It's been that way since Rachel disappeared. I don't talk about Rachel much. 10 years is a long time, but not long enough to make the questions stop echoing in your head late at night. The official report called it a hiking accident, probable animal attack, remains never recovered. I learned to live with probable and never because I had no other choice. The mountains became my refuge after that. I knew every ridge, every game trail, every place where the cell signal died and the world felt truly empty. That knowledge made me useful to the power company, and it made me comfortable with being alone. Or at least, I thought I was alone. The storm that August had been brutal. 3 days of wind and rain that knocked out power across 2 counties. I'd been working 18-hour shifts, and by that Friday afternoon, I was exhausted and careless. I should have noticed the silence in the forest earlier. I should have paid attention to how the birds had stopped singing. But I didn't notice. Not until I heard the sound. It was a high-pitched cry, barely audible over the rush of the swollen creek. At first, I thought it was a bird, maybe an eagle or a hawk. But something about the tone made me stop mid-step. It sounded desperate. It sounded wrong. I was standing on a rocky outcrop above Miller's Creek, checking the tension on a line that had been flagged as potentially damaged. The water below was running fast and brown, carrying broken branches and debris from higher up the mountain. I almost ignored the sound. I had 3 more poles to inspect before dark, and the trail back to my truck was a good hour's hike. But the cry came again, weaker this time, and I found myself scrambling down the embankment before I'd consciously made the decision to investigate. The rocks were slick with spray, and I nearly lost my footing twice. When I reached the creek's edge, I saw it, a small, dark shape clinging to a partially submerged log about 20 feet downstream. The current was trying to tear it loose, and I could see it wouldn't hold on much longer. I didn't think. I just moved. I waded into the creek, the icy water immediately soaking through my boots and jeans. The current was stronger than I'd expected, and I had to brace myself against the rocks to keep from being swept away. When I reached the log, I grabbed the creature with both hands and pulled. It came free with a sudden release, and I nearly stumbled backward into the water. The thing was heavier than it looked, dense with soaked fur and surprisingly solid muscle. It didn't struggle. It just clung to my jacket with tiny, almost human-like hands, shivering violently. I fought my way back to shore and collapsed on the rocks, breathing hard. That's when I got my first real look at what I'd rescued. It was small, maybe 2 feet long, not counting the tail. Covered in dark, matted fur that looked black when wet. The face was flat, with a small nose and a mouth that seemed too expressive for any animal I'd ever seen.
But it was the eyes that stopped me cold. They were dark brown, almost black,
and they looked directly into mine with an intensity that made my skin crawl. There was intelligence there, not the clever awareness of a dog or the calculating gaze of a crow. Something deeper, something that felt uncomfortably close to human. I told myself it was a monkey, some exotic pet that had escaped or been released. It happened sometimes. People bought animals they couldn't handle and dumped them in remote areas. That explanation made sense. It was logical. It let me push down the unease that was trying to work its way up from my gut. The creature made a soft sound, not quite a whimper, but something close. It was still shivering, and I realized it might be going into hypothermia. I needed to get it somewhere warm and dry. But even as I thought that, I knew I wasn't going to call anyone. Not the Forest Service, not animal control, not the sheriff's department. I should have asked myself why. I should have questioned that instinct. But I didn't. Not then. I carried the creature back to my truck, wrapped in my jacket, and it didn't fight me once. It just pressed itself against my chest, those unsettling eyes watching everything around us with an alertness that seemed wrong for something that had nearly drowned. During that hour-long hike, I kept expecting it to struggle or bite or try to escape. It did none of those things. It just watched and waited, like it was studying me. The truck was parked at the end of a logging road, 3 miles from the nearest paved highway. I set the creature in the passenger seat while I dug through my gearbox, looking for something to contain it. I had a canvas tarp, some rope, an emergency blanket. Nothing that would work as a cage or carrier. When I turned back around, the creature hadn't moved. It sat exactly where I'd placed it, water still dripping from its fur, watching me with that same intense focus. "What the hell are you?" I asked out loud. It tilted its head slightly, and for one disorienting moment, I had the impression it understood the question. I drove home with the creature on the seat beside me, wrapped in the emergency blanket. It was late afternoon by then, and the mountain roads were empty. I live about 40 minutes from the nearest town, a place called Clearwater Ridge, population 263, and my cabin is another 20 minutes beyond that, up a gravel road that turns to mud whenever it rains. Most people don't even know the road exists. The isolation had been one of the selling points when Rachel and I bought the property. 5 acres of forest, a small creek, and not another human being for miles. After she disappeared, that isolation became something different. A buffer. A place where I didn't have to answer questions or see the pity in people's eyes. Now, driving home with this impossible creature beside me, I felt grateful for that distance in a new way. Whatever this thing was, I didn't want witnesses. I didn't want questions I couldn't answer. I didn't want anyone taking it away before I understood what I'd found. That should have been my first warning, that possessive instinct, that need to keep it secret. But I ignored it. When I pulled up to the cabin, the sun was starting to sink behind the western ridge. I carried the creature inside, still wrapped in the blanket, and set it down on the couch. It looked around the room with that same focused attention, taking in the wood stove, the kitchen, the hallway leading to the bedroom, cataloging everything. I built a fire and found some old towels to dry it off. It let me do it, remaining perfectly still while I rubbed the water from its fur. Underneath, the coat was a dark, reddish-brown, thick and surprisingly soft. The hands, I couldn't think of them as paws, had 5 fingers with small, curved nails. The feet were similar, with an opposable toe that would make climbing easy. "You're definitely not a monkey," I said quietly. The creature made a soft, chirping sound and reached out to touch the towel with one small hand. The gesture was so deliberate, so curious, that I felt a chill run down my spine. I heated up some soup, vegetable beef, the only thing I had that seemed remotely appropriate, and offered it in a bowl. The creature sniffed it cautiously, then dipped its fingers in, and brought them to its mouth. It ate slowly, methodically, never taking its eyes off me. While it ate, I tried to think rationally about what to do next. I could call the university in Missoula. They'd have biologists who could identify it. Or I could contact the Forest Service. They dealt with wildlife situations all the time. Hell, I could even post a picture online and let the internet figure it out. But I didn't want to do any of those things, and that worried me more than the creature itself. Instead, I made a decision that I still can't fully explain. I decided to take it back to the forest. Not to abandon it, but to give it a chance to find its way home. Because something this intelligent, this aware, had to have come from somewhere. Had to have a family looking for it. The next morning, I loaded my backpack with supplies, water, some food, a first aid kit, and carried the creature back into the mountains. I chose a location about 2 miles from where I'd found it, a small clearing surrounded by old-growth timber. There was a natural shelter formed by a fallen hemlock, its root ball creating a cave-like space. I cleared out the debris and lined it with pine boughs to make it dry and comfortable. The creature watched me work, sitting on a nearby stump. When I finished, I set it down in the shelter and stepped back. "Your family will come for you," I said, feeling foolish for talking to it like it could understand. "They'll find you here." It looked at me for a long moment, then made a soft sound that might have been acknowledgement. Or goodbye, or something else entirely. I left food and water just outside the shelter and hiked back to my truck. The whole way, I felt like I was making a mistake. Like I should have kept it with me, or called someone, or done literally anything other than leave it alone in the forest. But I also felt certain, in a way I couldn't explain, that this was the right choice. I didn't know that I was being watched the entire time. I didn't know that my decision to leave the creature safely in the forest, rather than contact the authorities, had just saved my life. Or that the real test was about to begin. That night, I slept poorly. I kept waking up with the feeling that I'd forgotten something important, something that was trying to surface from the back of my mind. Around 3 in the morning, I finally gave up and made coffee. I stood at the kitchen window, looking out at the dark forest, and tried to shake the feeling that something out there was looking back. I went back to work the next day because I didn't know what else to do. The creature was out of my hands now, and I told myself that was the end of it. Just a strange encounter, a story I'd probably never tell anyone. I had poles to inspect and lines to repair, and the power company didn't care about my personal dramas. But from the moment I stepped outside that morning, something felt off. The forest was too quiet. I'd lived in these mountains long enough to know their rhythms, the way ravens called to each other at dawn, how squirrels chattered warnings when a predator was near, the constant background noise of birds and insects that you only noticed when it stopped. That morning, there was none of it. Just an oppressive silence that made every footstep sound too loud. I told myself it was nothing. Animals went quiet sometimes. Maybe there was a bear in the area, or a mountain lion, something that made the smaller creatures nervous. It happened. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I spent the morning working on a section of line about 5 miles from my cabin, replacing insulators that had cracked during the storm. It was routine work, the kind of thing I could do on autopilot, which gave my mind too much freedom to wander. I kept thinking about the creature, wondering if it was still in the shelter, wondering if something had found it during the night. Around noon, I climbed down from a pole and realized my wire cutters were missing. I'd had them clipped to my belt less than an hour ago. I was certain of it. I searched the area around the pole, thinking maybe they'd fallen while I was working, but I couldn't find them anywhere. It was like they'd vanished. That was the first thing, small enough to dismiss as my own carelessness. The second thing happened an hour later. I'd moved to a different pole, maybe half a mile down the line, and when I opened my gear bag, I found my cutters inside. Not clipped to the outside where they should have been, not on the ground where they might have fallen. Inside the closed bag, nested carefully on top of my spare gloves. I stood there staring at them for a long moment, trying to make sense of it. Had I put them there and forgotten? Was I that tired? I'd been working long hours, sleeping poorly. Maybe my mind was playing tricks on me. But I didn't believe that. Not really. I worked faster after that, wanting to finish and get back to my truck. The silence in the forest was getting worse, more oppressive. Even the wind had died, leaving the trees standing perfectly still. It felt like the whole mountain was holding its breath. When I finally packed up my gear and started hiking back, I noticed the footprint. It was in a patch of mud near the trail, maybe 20 feet from where I'd been working. A bare footprint, human-shaped, but wrong. Too large. The impression was at least 16 inches long, maybe longer, and wide in proportion. The toes were clearly defined, with the big toe set apart from the others in a way that suggested an opposable grip, like a thumb. I crouched down beside it, my heart beating faster than it should have been. The print was fresh, recent enough that water was still seeping into the depression from the surrounding mud. Whatever made it had been here within the last hour, maybe the last few minutes. I looked up slowly, scanning the tree line. Nothing moved. Nothing made a sound. But I suddenly felt very exposed, very alone, and very far from help. I stood up and continued walking, forcing myself to maintain a steady pace, not running, not panicking, just walking like a man who hadn't seen anything unusual. But I couldn't stop myself from checking over my shoulder every few yards. The footprint couldn't have been from the creature I'd rescued. That thing was small, child-sized. This print came from something massive, something that could make a bear look small by comparison. When I reached my truck, I threw my gear in the back and locked the doors before I started the engine. I sat there for a moment, hands shaking slightly on the steering wheel, trying to decide what to do. I could report it, call the Forest Service, tell them there might be a bear or something in the area. But even as I thought it, I knew I wouldn't, because the print hadn't looked like any bear I'd ever seen. The drive home felt longer than usual. I kept checking my mirrors, half expecting to see something following me on the empty road. When I finally pulled up to my cabin, the sun was already sinking toward the horizon. I'd lost track of time somewhere between finding the footprint and driving home. The lost hours bothered me almost as much as everything else. I went inside and locked the door behind me. Then I did something I hadn't done since Rachel disappeared. I checked all the windows, making sure they were latched. I pulled the curtains closed. I even dragged a chair over to brace the back door, even though it had a perfectly good deadbolt. I was acting paranoid, and I knew it, but I couldn't stop. I made dinner and tried to watch TV, but I couldn't focus. Around 9 o'clock, I gave up and went to bed early. I lay there in the dark, listening to the cabin settle, to the wind picking up outside, to all the normal night sounds that suddenly didn't feel normal at all. That's when I heard the footsteps. They were slow and deliberate, circling the cabin. Heavy enough that I could hear them even through the walls, even over my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. They moved from the front of the house to the side, pausing at each window. I heard something brush against the glass of my bedroom window, just a whisper of contact, like fingers tracing the pane. I lay perfectly still, barely breathing. The footsteps continued around to the back door. There was a long pause, then the sound of the handle being tested. Once, twice. Not rattled or shaken, but turned carefully, deliberately, like whatever was out there was learning how it worked. The deadbolt held. After a moment, the footsteps moved on, completing the circuit of the cabin. Then they stopped near the front porch, and I heard a different sound. A low, rumbling vocalization that wasn't quite a growl, wasn't quite language, but felt like it carried meaning, like it was trying to communicate something. Then, silence. I waited in the dark for what felt like hours, but was probably only 20 minutes. Finally, I worked up the courage to get out of bed and look out the window. I pulled the curtain back just an inch and peered out into the moonlit yard. Nothing. No movement. No shapes in the shadows. Just my empty yard and the dark wall of trees beyond. But in the morning, I would find the proof. In the morning, I would understand that this was just the beginning. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. I sat in my living room with every light in the cabin turned on, a baseball bat across my lap, listening to silence that felt heavier than any sound. When dawn finally broke, I was exhausted and wired at the same time, running on adrenaline and too much coffee. The morning light made everything seem less threatening. In daylight, I could almost convince myself that I'd imagined the footsteps, that the sounds had been a deer or a bear, that my exhausted mind had transformed something ordinary into something sinister. Then I opened the front door and saw what had been left on my porch. 3 objects arranged in a careful line. My wire cutters, which I definitely brought home and left in my gear bag in the truck. A smooth river stone, the kind you'd find in a creek bed, placed perfectly in the center of the porch. And a small carved piece of wood. My hands were shaking as I picked up the carving. It was crude but unmistakable, a rough figure of a human holding something small. The proportions were wrong, the details simplified, but the meaning was crystal clear. Someone had carved a representation of me pulling the creature from the water. I stood there holding it, my mind refusing to process what I was seeing. This wasn't random. This wasn't an animal. This was deliberate communication. Proof of memory, of intelligence, of gratitude. And proof that whatever had circled my cabin last night had been watching me for longer than I'd realized. I looked up at the tree line, my skin crawling with the certainty that I was being observed right now. Nothing moved among the trees, but I felt it anyway, that weight of attention, focused and patient. I didn't hurt it, I said out loud, my voice sounding strange in the morning quiet. I helped it. I took it somewhere safe. No response, just the morning wind stirring the pine branches. I went back inside and locked the door. I set the 3 objects on my kitchen table and stared at them while I tried to figure out what to do. The rational part of my brain was screaming at me to call someone, the sheriff, the Forest Service, a biologist, anyone. But another part, the part that had kept me from reporting the creature in the first place, knew that would be a mistake. Whatever this was, it was bigger than a lost animal. It was bigger than me. And bringing in authorities would mean attention, investigation, people tramping through the forest with guns and cameras. People who wouldn't understand, who would see a threat instead of, what? A communication attempt? A thank you? I realized I was thinking about it like a first contact scenario. Like I'd encountered something that existed outside the normal categories of animal behavior. And that realization should have terrified me more than it did. Instead, I felt something closer to wonder. I spent that day around the cabin, trying to work up the courage to go back into the forest. I had repairs scheduled, poles to inspect, but I called in sick for the first time in 3 years. My supervisor wasn't happy, but I didn't care. I needed to understand what was happening before I ventured back into those woods. Around noon, I gathered some supplies, canned food, bottled water, a first aid kit, and placed them at the edge of my property line, about 50 feet from the cabin. A peace offering, a way to show I wasn't a threat. I felt ridiculous doing it, like I was leaving milk out for fairies, but I couldn't think of anything else to do. When I came back an hour later to check, the supplies were gone. In their place was another river stone and a small branch arranged in an X pattern. The pattern repeated over the next 2 days. I would leave food and water at the tree line. It would disappear within hours. Sometimes I'd find objects left in return, stones, interesting pieces of wood, once a perfectly shed deer antler. Always arranged deliberately, always where I'd see them. I started to relax slightly. This wasn't aggression, this was exchange, trade, maybe even the beginning of trust. That was my mistake. I was thinking like a human making contact with an intelligent animal. I should have been thinking about what it meant that something this large, this intelligent, had been living in these mountains without anyone knowing. I should have wondered how that was possible. I should have been more careful. On the third night, I woke to the sound of something being dragged across my porch. Heavy, deliberate scraping, like furniture being moved. I grabbed my flashlight and went to the window, my heart hammering. In the beam of light, I could see deep gouges in the wooden planks of my porch. Fresh scratches, 4 parallel lines, each one at least a 1/4 inch deep. They ran from one side of the porch to the other, right in front of my door. Not random damage, measured, controlled. A demonstration of strength, a reminder of what those hands could do if they wanted to. The message was clear. I was being tolerated, not accepted. I was under evaluation, and the test wasn't over. I backed away from the window, my mouth dry. This thing, whatever it was, had been showing me its gentle side. The gifts, the careful approach, the patient observation. But underneath that was something powerful enough to tear through wood with its bare hands. Something that could have broken into my cabin any time it wanted and had chosen not to. The question was, why? I thought about the creature I'd pulled from the water, about my decision not to report it, not to call authorities, not to treat it like a specimen to be studied. I'd given it privacy, dignity, a chance to return to its family without interference. And maybe that decision had been noted. Maybe it had mattered. But I was still being tested, and I had no idea what would happen if I failed. The next morning, I found something new on my porch. Not a gift this time, a warning. It was a photograph. One of the photographs that had been sitting on my mantelpiece inside the cabin. A picture of Rachel and me, taken the summer before she disappeared. We were standing at a mountain overlook, smiling, the world spread out behind us. The photograph had been taken from inside my home, which meant that at some point, maybe while I was sleeping, maybe while I was away, something had been inside my cabin, had walked through my rooms, had looked at my things, had chosen this specific image and carried it outside. I picked it up with shaking hands, noticing it wasn't damaged. It had been handled carefully, respectfully even. But the message was unmistakable. Nowhere was truly private. Nowhere was truly safe. I was being watched more closely than I'd imagined. And somewhere in the back of my mind, a darker thought was forming. A question I didn't want to ask, but couldn't ignore. Had Rachel really died in a hiking accident 10 years ago? Or had she encountered something in these mountains that I was only now beginning to understand? I spent the rest of that morning sitting at my kitchen table, staring at the photograph of Rachel and me. My hands had finally stopped shaking,
but my mind was racing in circles, chasing questions I'd buried 10 years ago. Rachel had been an experienced hiker. She knew these mountains as well as I did, maybe better. She was careful, prepared, never took unnecessary risks. When she disappeared, the search and rescue teams had found her backpack near a cliff edge, torn and scattered. Blood on the rocks, signs of a struggle. The official conclusion was a mountain lion attack, though they'd never found her body or identified any specific animal. I'd accepted that explanation because I'd had no choice. Because the alternative, that she'd simply vanished without a trace, without reason, was unbearable. But now, holding this photograph that had been taken from inside my home by something that shouldn't exist, I had to consider possibilities I'd never allowed myself to think about.
What if Rachel had found something in these mountains? What if she'd seen something she wasn't supposed to see? What if the accident had been something else entirely? I pushed the thought away. It was too big, too dark, and I had no evidence. Just paranoia and exhaustion, and the growing sense that my entire understanding of this place had been built on ignorance. I put the photograph back on the mantelpiece where it belonged. Then I did something that surprised even me. I left my front door unlocked when I went outside to check the property. A gesture of trust, or maybe surrender. A way of saying, I understand. You could have hurt me already if that was your intention. The day was overcast, threatening rain. I walked the perimeter of my property, looking for signs, for footprints, for anything that might help me understand what I was dealing with. I found tracks near the creek, the same massive barefoot prints I'd seen before. They led into the water and disappeared, as if whatever made them had deliberately avoided leaving a trail. Near the tree line, I found something else. A structure I hadn't noticed before, or maybe one that had been built recently. It was made from broken branches arranged in a specific pattern, a rough circle about 4 feet across, with smaller sticks woven through in a spiral design. It looked almost like a wreath or a symbol placed deliberately at the boundary between my property and the forest. I crouched down to examine it more closely. The craftsmanship was crude but intentional. Some of the branches had been stripped of bark in patterns, light wood against dark, creating contrast. It was art, or language, or both. And it had been left where I would find it. I heard a sound then, a soft vocalization from somewhere in the trees. Not threatening, just present, an acknowledgement. I looked up slowly, scanning the shadows between the trunks, but saw nothing. The sound didn't repeat. "Thank you," I said quietly, "for the gifts, for not hurting me." Silence. Then, from a different direction, another soft sound, like a response. Like it was letting me know it had moved, that it could move without me hearing, that I was only aware of it because it chose to be noticed. I stood up slowly and walked back to the cabin, feeling eyes on me the entire way. When I reached the porch, I turned around one more time. Still, nothing visible. But the feeling of being watched was stronger than ever. That afternoon, everything changed. I was inside making coffee when I heard vehicles on my road. Multiple engines, moving slowly. I looked out the window and saw a convoy of 3 trucks, 2 civilian vehicles, and one that had government plates. They pulled up into my driveway and parked in a line. 4 people got out. 2 men in casual outdoor gear who had "geologist" written all over them, from their hiking boots to their equipment vests. A woman in business casual with a tablet and an expression that said she was used to getting her way. And a man in his 50s wearing khakis and a polo shirt with a corporate logo I didn't recognize. I met them on the porch, my mind racing. This couldn't be a coincidence. Not now.
Not after everything that had happened over the past few days. The woman with the tablet spoke first. "Mr. Reed? I'm Sarah Chen from Apex Resource Development. These gentlemen are with the USGS. We're conducting a survey of mineral deposits in this area, and we need access to the forest beyond your property." I kept my face neutral. "This is federal land. You don't need my permission." "No," she agreed, "but we'd like to stage our equipment from your property if possible. It would make the survey much more efficient. We're prepared to compensate you for the inconvenience." One of the geologists stepped forward. "We'll only need a week or two. We're looking at rare earth elements, copper deposits, that sort of thing.
Nothing invasive, just taking samples, mapping the geology." I looked past them at the trucks, at the equipment I could see loaded in the beds. Ground-penetrating radar, core drilling rigs, GPS units. They were planning to map every inch of these mountains, and if there was something living in those forests that wanted to remain hidden, this survey would find it. "When are you planning to start?" I asked. "Tomorrow morning," Chen said. "We've already got permits from the Forest Service. We just wanted to touch base with the local residents, see if anyone had concerns or information about the terrain." Information. That's what they were really after. Had anyone seen anything unusual? Were there areas that should be avoided? I could feel the weight of the question behind her professional smile. I thought about the creature I'd pulled from the water, about the massive being that had been circling my cabin, leaving gifts, testing me, about Rachel, and the questions I'd started asking. And I made a decision. "The terrain's pretty rough up there," I said slowly. "Storm damage from last week, a lot of fallen trees, washed out trails. The north side of the ridge is especially bad. I was up there 2 days ago and nearly broke my ankle. I'd recommend staying on the southern approaches if you can." It was a lie. The north side of the ridge was fine. It was also where I'd left the creature, where I'd seen the footprints, where I suspected the family was staying. If I could push the survey team south, away from that area, maybe I could buy some time. Chen made a note on her tablet. "Thanks for the heads up. Anything else we should know?" "Bears," I said. "Saw a big grizzly last week near Miller's Creek. Probably have cubs nearby. You might want to avoid that whole drainage." Another lie. I hadn't seen any bears. But Miller's Creek was where I'd found the young one, and it seemed like a good area to keep humans away from. One of the geologists frowned. "The Forest Service didn't mention bear activity." "Because I haven't reported it yet," I said. "Just saw it a few days ago. But I'm telling you now, that area's got an active den. I wouldn't go near it." They exchanged glances. Chen looked like she wanted to press further, but the corporate guy checked his watch and said something about getting back to town before dark. They thanked me for my time, promised to stay clear of my immediate property, and drove away. I watched their vehicles disappear down the road, my heart pounding. I just lied to a federal survey team and a private corporation. If they found out, there could be consequences. But if they'd gone where I thought they were planning to go, the consequences would have been worse. That night, I left more supplies at the tree line. Food, water, and a note written on a piece of paper weighted down with a rock. I felt ridiculous writing it, but I did it anyway. "People coming, surveyors. Stay north and east. Stay hidden. I'll try to keep them away." I didn't know if whatever was out there could read. I didn't even know if it would understand the warning. But I had to try. When I woke up the next morning, the supplies were gone. The note was still there, but it had been moved. And next to it was a gift, unlike any I'd received before. It was a crude map, scratched into a flat piece of bark. Lines representing ridges and valleys, circles that might have been landmarks. and an X, marked in what looked like charcoal, showing a location deep in the mountains. An invitation, or a test. I had no idea what it meant, but I knew that the real evaluation was about to begin. I spent the entire morning staring at that piece of bark, trying to decode what it meant. The map was crude but detailed enough that I could recognize some of the features. A ridgeline I knew, what looked like Miller's Creek, and several other landmarks that matched the terrain north of my property. The X was marked in a location I'd never explored. A remote valley, about 8 miles into the backcountry, where the mountains got steep and the forest grew thick enough to block out the sun. An invitation to meet, or a warning to stay away. I had no way of knowing which. By noon, I'd made my decision. I packed a light bag, water, energy bars, a first aid kit, my good hiking boots. I left my phone on the kitchen counter. Whatever was going to happen, I didn't want any record of it. I didn't want to be tracked. And some stubborn part of me wanted to show that I was willing to go into this alone, without backup, without safety nets. The hike took 3 hours. I followed game trails when I could find them, pushing through undergrowth when I couldn't. The forest this far in was old growth, the kind of timber that hadn't seen a chainsaw in 100 years. The trees were massive, their canopies so dense that the forest floor existed in perpetual twilight. It was beautiful and oppressive at the same time. I was being followed. I knew it without seeing anything, without hearing footsteps. Just that constant awareness of being observed, of something pacing me through the trees, always staying just out of sight. It should have terrified me. Instead, it felt almost reassuring, like I was being escorted rather than hunted. The valley on the map turned out to be a narrow gorge carved by an ancient glacier. Steep walls rose on either side, covered in moss and ferns. A small stream ran through the center, and the air smelled of wet stone and decay. It was the kind of place that felt untouched, forgotten, existing outside of time. I stopped at the edge of the gorge and waited. My heart was pounding, and I could feel sweat cooling on my back despite the chill in the air. I had no idea what I was supposed to do next. The map had led me here, but there were no further instructions. Then I heard it, a soft sound from the rocks above me. I looked up slowly and saw the young creature I'd pulled from the water. It was perched on a boulder about 20 feet up, watching me with those same intelligent eyes. It looked healthier now, its fur dry and groomed, its movements confident. When it saw me looking, it made a soft chirping sound and gestured with one small hand, beckoning me forward. I climbed carefully, using roots and handholds, until I reached the boulder. The creature waited until I was close, then turned and scampered deeper into the gorge, looking back to make sure I was following. I felt like I was being led by a child, shown something important, something secret. We went about 100 yards into the gorge before the creature stopped at the entrance to a cave. Not a natural cave. The opening was too regular, the walls too smooth. It had been carved or worn by something over years, maybe decades. The creature chirped again and disappeared inside. I stood at the entrance, every instinct screaming at me to turn around and run. This was a trap. It had to be. I was being led underground, into a confined space where anything could happen, where no one would ever find me if things went wrong. But I'd come this far, and some part of me needed to know. I ducked inside. The cave was larger than it appeared from the outside, the ceiling high enough that I could stand upright. Light filtered in from cracks in the rock above, creating shafts of pale illumination. And covering the walls were markings, handprints, hundreds of them, maybe thousands. They ranged from tiny prints that looked like they'd been made by infants to massive ones that dwarfed my own hands. Some were faded with age, others looked recent. They overlapped, covered every available surface, creating a record of what? Inhabitants? Visitors? Generations? I reached out to touch one of the prints, and my hand looked absurdly small by comparison. Whatever had made this mark had hands the size of dinner plates. A sound behind me made me turn. The massive being from the forest was standing at the cave entrance, blocking the light. I could only see its silhouette, but that was enough. It was at least 8 feet tall, broad-shouldered, covered in dark fur. The young creature sat at its feet, looking up at it, then back at me. I should have been terrified. Every rational part of my brain was screaming. But instead, I felt an odd sense of calm. This creature had led me here. It had shown me this place. It could have killed me a dozen times over the past week, and it hadn't. This wasn't an ambush. This was something else. "Thank you," I said quietly, "for trusting me with this." The being made a low sound, not quite a growl, deeper and more complex. It felt like language, like it was trying to communicate something beyond the limitations of its vocal apparatus. Then it stepped aside, clearing the entrance, giving me a path to leave. The message was clear. I'd been shown something precious. A home, a history, a secret that had been kept for generations. And now, I was being given a choice: to leave and forget, or to leave and remember, to keep the secret or betray it. I walked slowly toward the entrance, passing within a few feet of the creature. Up close, I could see details I'd missed before: the intelligence in its eyes, the way its hands moved with deliberate control, the silver in its fur that suggested age and experience. This wasn't just an animal. This was a person. A different kind of person, but a person nonetheless. I stepped outside, and the creature followed, the young one scampering ahead. We stood together at the edge of the gorge, the three of us, in a silence that felt weighted with meaning. Then the creature reached down and picked up something from the ground, a branch about 3 feet long. It held it out to me, and after a moment's hesitation, I took it. The wood was smooth, worn, carved with the same spiral patterns I'd seen in the structure near my property. A gift, a symbol, a reminder. The being looked at me one more time, then turned and walked back toward the cave. The young one followed, pausing once to look back at me with what I could have sworn was gratitude. I was alone in the gorge, holding a carved branch and trying to process what had just happened. I'd been shown something that no one else had seen. I'd been trusted with a secret that could change everything if it got out. And I'd been given a responsibility I'd never asked for. I hiked back to my cabin in a daze. The sun was setting by the time I got home, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. The carved branch felt heavy in my hands, like it weighed more than just wood. When I got inside, I found a note taped to my door. It was from Sarah Chen, the woman from Apex Resource Development. "Mr. Reed, survey team reported unusual findings in the North Valley area. Large, unidentified tracks, possible den site, strange vocalizations recorded at night. Recommend you avoid that area until we complete our assessment. We'll update you when we know more. S. Chen." My blood ran cold. They'd found something. Despite my warnings, despite my attempts to redirect them, they'd gone north. They'd found tracks. Maybe they'd seen something. And now they were asking questions. I looked at the carved branch in my hands, at the spiral patterns that represented trust and secrecy. Then I looked at the note again, at the words, "We'll update you when we know more." I had to do something. The survey team was getting too close, and if they discovered what was really living in those mountains, everything would change. The beings would be hunted, studied, caged. The secret would be exposed. the trust would be broken. But what could one man do against a corporate survey team with government backing? The answer came to me slowly as I sat in my dark cabin and thought about the choices ahead. I couldn't stop them with force. I couldn't reason with them. But I could mislead them. I could plant false trails. I could use my knowledge of these mountains to send them in circles. I could protect the secret the only way I knew how, by becoming part of it. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table with a map of the area spread out in front of me, planning. The survey team had found tracks in the North Valley. That much was clear from Chen's note. But tracks could be explained away. Bears, moose, even hoaxes. What I needed to do was make sure they never found anything more concrete. Never got close enough to see what I'd seen. By dawn, I had a plan. It wasn't sophisticated, but it might work. I drove into Clearwater Ridge that morning and stopped at the ranger station. Tom Berkeley, the head ranger, had been a friend of Rachel's. We'd drifted apart after she died, but he still greeted me with a handshake and offered coffee. "Haven't seen you in town much lately," he said, pouring from a pot that looked like it had been sitting on the burner since yesterday. "Been busy. Listen, I need to report something." I took a sip of the bitter coffee and tried to look concerned. "I've been seeing signs of poachers up near my property. Trail cameras moved around, fresh vehicle tracks on closed roads, spent shells. I think someone's hunting elk out of season." Tom's expression darkened. Poaching was the kind of thing that got rangers mobilized fast. "Where exactly?" I pulled out my own map and pointed to an area about 3 miles south of where the survey team was working. "Here, mostly. And I heard some suspicious activity. Vehicles at night, that kind of thing. Thought you should know." "Appreciate it, Michael. We'll get some patrols up there." He made some notes. "You see any actual poachers? Get a look at vehicles?" "No clear sightings," I lied. "But the signs are there. Someone's working that area pretty hard." It wasn't much, but it would put ranger patrols in the wrong area, away from where the beings actually were. And if the survey team encountered rangers asking questions about their activities, it might slow them down, make them more cautious. When I got back to my cabin, there was another vehicle in my driveway, Chen's truck, and she was waiting on my porch with one of the geologists. "Mr. Reed," she said as I got out, "we need to talk." I kept my expression neutral. "About what?" "About what we found." She pulled up something on her tablet and showed it to me. It was a photograph of a footprint, the same massive barefoot print I'd seen before. "This was near Miller's Creek. The area you told us had bear activity." "Looks like a bear print to me," I said, not quite meeting her eyes. "It's not a bear print." The geologist spoke up, his voice tight with excitement or fear. I couldn't tell which. "We brought in a wildlife expert. He couldn't identify it. The size is wrong. The toe structure is wrong. The depth of the impression suggests something bipedal and extremely heavy." Chen was watching me carefully. "You've been living here for 10 years. You must have seen something. Heard stories. This area has a history of unusual sightings going back decades." I felt a chill run down my spine. "What kind of sightings?" "You know what kind." Her voice was flat. "The Forest Service has reports. Hikers, hunters, even some of their own rangers. Something large, bipedal, staying just out of sight. Some people call them Sasquatch, Bigfoot. Whatever you want to call it, there's documentation going back 50 years. I'd lived here a decade and never heard any of this. Or maybe I had and dismissed it, the way everyone dismisses such things. Stories for tourists, campfire tales. But Chen wasn't treating it like a joke. She was treating it like a corporate opportunity. "Why are you really here?" I asked quietly. "Apex Resource Development. You're not just looking for mineral deposits, are you?" She exchanged a glance with the geologist. The geological survey is real, but we're also gathering data on anomalous wildlife. There's a market for proof, documentation. If we can confirm the existence of an unknown primate species, the value is significant. You want to capture one? It wasn't a question. We want to document one, she corrected. Safely, scientifically. Think about what it would mean, Mr. Reed. A living relative of humans, surviving in the Pacific Northwest. The evolutionary implications alone. No. The word came out harder than I intended. You need to leave. We have permits. I don't care about your permits. Get off my property. Chen's expression hardened. You're protecting them. You've seen them, haven't you? You know where they are. She stepped closer. Mr. Reed, this is bigger than you. If these creatures exist, the world deserves to know. Science deserves to know. Science, I said slowly, has a way of destroying what it studies. You're not talking about observation. You're talking about exposure. And that's the same as extinction for something that survived by staying hidden. So you admit they exist. I'd said too much. I could see it in her eyes, the certainty, the vindication. She'd been testing me, and I'd failed. I admit nothing, I said, but I'm telling you to stay away from the North Valleys. It's dangerous terrain, and you're not equipped for it. We'll be the judge of that. She turned to leave, then paused. One more thing. We found something else yesterday. Audio recording. Our equipment picked up vocalizations, complex ones, almost like speech. We're having them analyzed now. She got in her truck and drove away, leaving me standing in my driveway with my heart pounding. They had recordings. They had prints. They were closing in, and my attempts to mislead them had only made them more determined. That night, I went back to the tree line and left everything I could think of: food, water, supplies. And another note, this one more urgent. They know. They're looking for you. You need to move deeper, farther north. Stay away from the valleys. I'll try to slow them down, but you have to go now. When I came back an hour later to check, everything was gone. In its place was a single object, a rock, split perfectly in half. The break so clean, it looked like it had been cut with a saw. But I could see the marks where massive hands had gripped and twisted, shattering stone with nothing but raw strength. A demonstration, a reminder. These beings weren't helpless. They were powerful, dangerous if they needed to be, but they were choosing not to be. The question was, how long could that choice last? Over the next 3 days, I did everything I could to interfere with the survey. I moved their trail markers when they weren't looking. I told them about dangerous terrain that didn't exist, and safe routes through areas I knew were impassable. I even faked an injury on one of their scheduled survey days, forcing them to help me back to my cabin and losing them half a day of work. But they kept finding things, more tracks, more vocalizations, and their determination only grew stronger. On the 4th day, Chen showed up at my door with 2 new people, a man in tactical gear who had security contractor written all over him, and a woman with expensive camera equipment. Mr. Reed, Chen said, we're organizing a night expedition. Thermal imaging, motion sensors, the works. If something is out there, we're going to document it. I'm giving you one last chance to cooperate. Tell us what you know, and we'll make sure you're credited in any discovery. I looked at the security contractor, at the gun on his hip that he wasn't bothering to hide, at the camera woman, already taking photos of my cabin, my property, at Chen's determined expression. There's nothing out there, I said flatly. You're wasting your time and money. Then you won't mind if we search from your property tonight. Better vantage point into the North Valley. She didn't wait for an answer. They started unloading equipment, setting up a base camp in my front yard. I watched them work, feeling helpless and angry and scared. They were going to find something, and when they did, everything would change. That night, as they prepared their equipment and checked their cameras, I made a decision that would either save everything or destroy it. I was going to warn the beings one more time, in person, even if it meant walking into the forest with a corporate security team watching, with thermal cameras tracking my every move. Because I'd seen the cave. I'd seen the handprints spanning generations. I'd been trusted with a secret that was bigger than science, bigger than profit, bigger than my own safety. And I wasn't going to betray that trust. Not now. Not ever. I waited until midnight. The survey team had set up their equipment in a perimeter around my property. Thermal cameras on tripods, motion sensors strung between trees, recording devices that could pick up sounds humans couldn't hear. Chen and the camera woman were in their truck, monitoring feeds on laptops. The security contractor was doing regular patrols, his hand never far from his weapon. They were hunting. That's what this was. Dressed up in scientific language and corporate justification, but at its core, this was a hunt. I stayed inside my cabin with the lights on, making coffee, moving around in ways they could see through the windows, acting normal, waiting for my moment. Around midnight, I saw the security contractor check his watch and head toward the trucks. Shift change, maybe, or a break. The camera woman was focused on her screens, and Chen had her back to my cabin. I slipped out the back door. I'd lived in these mountains long enough to move quietly, and I'd spent the last week learning where the survey team's sensors were positioned. I knew the gaps in their coverage, the blind spots their equipment couldn't see. I moved through shadows, staying low, using the terrain to mask my thermal signature. It took me 20 minutes to get beyond their perimeter, and every second I expected to hear shouts, to see flashlights, to hear the security contractor's voice demanding I stop. But I made it into the tree line, unseen. The forest was different at night. The darkness was absolute, the kind of black that city people never experience. I didn't use a flashlight. It would give me away instantly. Instead, I moved by feel and memory, following trails I'd walked 100 times. My eyes adjusted slowly, picking out the slightly lighter spaces between trees, the texture differences that meant open ground versus undergrowth. I was heading for the gorge, for the cave where I'd been shown the handprints. It was the only place I could think to go, the only way to deliver a warning that might actually be heard. But it was over 8 miles in the dark, through terrain that was dangerous even in daylight. I'd gone maybe 2 miles when I realized I wasn't alone. There was no sound, no movement I could see, just that familiar feeling of being watched, but stronger now, more urgent. Something was pacing me through the trees, staying close. I stopped and spoke quietly into the darkness. They're looking for you. They have cameras, sensors, armed men. You need to know what you're dealing with. Silence. Then, from somewhere ahead of me, a soft vocalization. Not the sound I'd heard before. This was different, sharper, almost like a question. "Yes, I came to warn you," I said, feeling absurd for having a conversation with the darkness. "They won't stop. They have money and equipment, and they've found your tracks, your sounds. They're going to keep searching until..." A hand, massive, fur-covered, impossibly strong, gripped my shoulder from behind. I froze, every muscle locked with terror. The hand didn't hurt me, didn't threaten. It just held me still, kept me from moving forward. I could feel the warmth of the being behind me, could hear its breathing, slow, controlled, deliberate. Then it guided me, not forcefully, but firmly, turning me 90 degrees to the left, off the trail I'd been following. It released me and made a soft sound, almost like encouragement, telling me to go this way instead. I understood.
The cave was compromised, or too obvious, or somehow dangerous now. I was being redirected, taken somewhere else. I walked in the new direction, and the being followed. I could hear it now, moving through the forest with surprising quiet for something so large. We walked for what felt like hours, but was probably only 40 minutes. The terrain got steeper, rockier. We were climbing into higher country, away from the valleys where the survey team was focused. Finally, the being stopped me with another touch on my shoulder. We were standing at the edge of a small clearing, and in the faint moonlight filtering through the clouds, I could see shapes, multiple shapes, standing at the far side of the clearing. A family. That's what I was looking at. The massive being behind me, another equally large one across the clearing, and between them, two smaller figures. The young one I'd rescued, and another that looked slightly larger, maybe an older sibling. They'd brought me to their family, shown me that they weren't a lone creature or a pair, but a group, a community. And they were all here because they'd decided I could be trusted with this knowledge. The larger being across the clearing stepped forward into a shaft of moonlight. Female, I realized, though I couldn't say exactly how I knew. She was carrying something, a bundle of some kind. She approached slowly, stopping about 10 feet away from me. Then she set the bundle down and stepped back. I moved forward carefully and knelt beside it. It was wrapped in bark and tied with what looked like woven grass. I unwrapped it slowly, my hands shaking. Inside was Rachel's jacket.
I stopped breathing. The jacket was faded and weathered, but I recognized it immediately. The blue fleece she'd been wearing the day she disappeared. The day the search teams had found her backpack torn and scattered, blood on the rocks, signs of a struggle that they'd attributed to a mountain lion. But there was no damage to the jacket, no tears, no blood, no signs of violence. It had been carefully preserved, wrapped and protected for 10 years. What happened to her? My voice came out as barely a whisper. Please, I need to know. The female being made a low sound, sorrowful, I thought, though I couldn't be sure. Then she turned and gestured toward the trees. Another figure emerged from the shadows, and my heart nearly stopped. It wasn't Rachel, but it was human. A man, maybe in his 30s, dressed in old, patched clothes, his hair long and matted. He looked wild, feral almost, but his eyes were clear and intelligent. He stopped at the edge of the clearing and looked at me. "She fell," he said, his voice rough from disuse. 10 years ago, I saw it happen. She was climbing near the North Ridge, and the rock gave way. Fell maybe 60 feet. By the time I got to her," he paused, swallowing hard, "she was already gone. I'm sorry." "You saw it?" I could barely process what I was hearing. Why didn't anyone?" "Because I don't exist anymore," he said quietly. "Not in the world you come from. I've been here for 15 years, living with them, learning from them. When I found your wife, they were the ones who helped me do what needed to be done. We buried her in a place where she could rest, where the animals wouldn't find her." "Where?" The word came out harsh, desperate. "I'll show you," he said, "when it's light, when it's safe. But you need to understand, they protected your wife's memory. They preserved what they could. They wanted you to know she didn't suffer. That's why they kept the jacket." They were waiting for the right time to return it. I looked at the beings standing around the clearing, at the family that had been watching me for weeks, testing me, evaluating whether I could be trusted with this truth. They could have let me believe the official story, could have let me think she'd been killed by an animal.
but they'd chosen to give me answers instead. "The people down there," I said, looking at the strange man. "They have equipment, armed guards. They're going to find you. Find all of you." "I know," he said. "They've been getting closer. That's why the family brought you here tonight. They need to know, are you with us or with them?" It was the test I'd been dreading. The final evaluation. Everything I'd done over the past weeks had led to this moment, this choice. I could go back to my cabin, tell Chen and her team that there was nothing out here. I could collect whatever payment they offered and go back to my solitary life. The beings would move deeper into the mountains, and eventually someone else would find them. Or I could choose to protect them, actively, deliberately. Become part of the secret instead of just keeping it. I thought about Rachel, about the beings who had helped bury her with dignity when they could have simply left her for scavengers. I thought about the young creature I'd pulled from the water, about the gifts left on my porch, about the trust that had been extended to me despite every reason to fear humans. "I'm with you," I said. "Tell me what you need me to do." The man who'd been living with them, he said his name was David, though he seemed to have almost forgotten it, explained the plan as we walked back through the forest in the pre-dawn darkness. The family followed at a distance, silent guardians moving through terrain they knew better than any human ever could. "They need to believe there's nothing here," David said. "Not just doubt it, believe it completely. You have to give Chen and her team a reason to leave and never come back." How? I was exhausted, running on adrenaline and the weight of everything I'd learned. "They have evidence, prints, recordings, photographs." "Evidence can be explained away," he said, "especially if there's a better story, something that makes them look foolish for believing in the first place." He told me what to do. It was risky, maybe even dangerous, but it might work. And I was committed now. I'd made my choice in that clearing, and there was no going back. I reached my cabin just as the sky was starting to lighten. The survey team's equipment was still running, their trucks still parked in my yard. I came in from the tree line openly, not trying to hide, and the security contractor spotted me immediately. "Where the hell have you been?" He had his hand on his weapon, his face tight with suspicion. "Checking my property," I said calmly. "Heard noises. Thought maybe you'd attracted some actual wildlife with all this equipment." Chen emerged from her truck, laptop in hand. "Our sensors tracked something large moving through the forest about 2 miles north. Then nothing, like it just disappeared." "You wouldn't know anything about that, would you?" "Maybe your equipment's malfunctioning," I said. "These mountains play tricks with electronics. Magnetic anomalies, mineral deposits. I could have told you that if you'd asked." She didn't believe me. I could see it in her eyes. But she couldn't prove anything either. "We're extending the survey," she said. "Another week, maybe 2. We're bringing in more equipment, better cameras, and we're filing for expanded permits to access the areas you've been trying to keep us away from." "Suit yourself," I said. "But I'm done cooperating. You want to use my property? You're going to have to get a court order." I went inside and locked the door, leaving them to their equipment and their determination. Then I made a phone call. Tom Berkeley, the ranger, answered on the 3rd ring. "Michael, it's 5 in the morning. I need to report something," I said, "about those poachers I mentioned. I think they're not poachers. I think they're the survey team from Apex Resource Development." There was a pause. "What do you mean?" "I've been watching them. They're not where their permits say they should be. They're accessing closed areas, setting up equipment on federal land without proper authorization. And I've seen them with weapons that aren't registered for wildlife safety. Tactical gear, military-grade equipment. I think they're up to something illegal." It was partially true. The security contractor did have tactical gear. They were accessing areas that might have been outside their permit zones.
and Tom Berkeley took environmental regulations seriously. "I'll send someone to check it out," he said. "Today. Thanks for the heads up." The Rangers arrived by mid-morning. 2 trucks, 4 officers, all business. They asked to see Chen's permits, inspected her equipment, questioned why she had armed security. The conversation got heated. Words like jurisdiction and compliance review and suspension of activities were thrown around. By noon, Chen and her team were packing up. Not permanently. I could see that in the way she looked at me as they loaded equipment, in the set of her jaw. This was a tactical retreat, not a surrender. But it bought time. After they left, I hiked back into the forest. David was waiting at a spot we'd agreed on, along with the young creature I'd rescued. It seemed like months ago now instead of weeks. "They'll come back," I said. "Chen's not the type to give up." "I know," David said, "but by then, the family will be gone. Deeper into the wilderness, places humans can't easily reach. They've done it before. They'll do it again." "What about you?" He smiled sadly. "I go where they go. This is my family now. Has been for 15 years. He paused. "But you have a choice. You can still go back to your life. Pretend none of this happened." I thought about my empty cabin, my solitary existence, the 10 years I'd spent living with questions about Rachel. And I thought about the answers I'd finally received, the truth that had been preserved and protected by beings that humans didn't believe existed. "I'll stay," I said. "Someone needs to be here, to watch, to warn you if anyone gets too close again." The young creature chirped softly and reached out to touch my hand with its small fingers. The gesture was gentle, trusting, a thank you, or a goodbye, or maybe both. David nodded. "They wanted me to give you something, a gift for the trust you've shown." He handed me a wrapped bundle. Inside was a carving, more detailed than any I'd seen before. It showed the rescue, me pulling the young one from the water, but it also showed what came after. The family watching, the gifts exchanged, the understanding reached. It was a story carved in wood, a record of what had happened between us. "They'll remember you," David said, "and if you ever need them, if you're ever in danger in these mountains, they'll be watching." We said our goodbyes, and I watched as David and the young creature disappeared into the forest. I stood there for a long time, holding the carving, feeling the weight of the responsibility I'd accepted. 3 months have passed since that night. Chen never came back. I heard through Tom Berkeley that Apex Resource Development abandoned their survey after some kind of internal review. The official story was that the mineral deposits weren't economically viable. The real reason, I suspect, was that they couldn't risk the embarrassment of chasing shadows. I still live in my cabin, still work my roots maintaining power lines. But I'm not alone anymore. Not really. Sometimes I find gifts at the tree line, interesting stones, carved wood. Once a deer antler that must have weighed 30 pounds. I leave food in return, and supplies when I can spare them. And sometimes, late at night, I see a shape at the edge of the forest, watching, waiting, making sure I'm okay. Last week, something remarkable happened. I was hiking near the gorge where I'd first been shown the cave, and I saw them, the adult, the young one, now nearly full grown. They were waiting on a boulder, as if they'd known I'd be there. The young one came forward slowly, allowing me to approach, and for the first time since that day I'd pulled it from the water, it let me touch it. Just for a moment. Just long enough to establish that the trust was real, that the bond was still there. Then they were gone, melting back into the forest like they'd never existed at all. I keep Rachel's jacket in a special place now, along with the carvings and the gifts. Reminders of what I've learned about these mountains, about the secrets they hold, about the beings that have survived here by remaining hidden. I buried Rachel properly, with David's help, in a place where wildflowers grow and the sun filters through the trees. She's finally at rest, and I finally have peace. I'm not trying to convince anyone that what I've told you is true. Believe it or don't, that's your choice. But I will say this: there are still places in this world where mystery exists, where the impossible survives by staying just out of sight, where trust can be earned, even across the boundary between species. And I've been given the privilege of protecting one of those places. If this story moved you, if it made you wonder what else might be hiding in the wild places of the world, do me a favor, leave a like, subscribe to hear more stories like this one, and drop a comment below. Tell me, would you have made the same choice I did? Would you protect the secret or expose it? I'd love to know. I'm no longer the man who thought he was alone in these mountains. I'm a keeper of secrets now, a guardian, and I'm no longer truly alone. Some mysteries are worth protecting, some secrets are worth keeping, and some trusts, once earned, are worth defending with everything you have. This is mine.